Maria Dolores Eliza Rosanna Gilbert, more famously known as Lola Montez, was born on the 17th of February 1821 in Grange, County Sligo, Ireland. For some reason, Eliza claimed that she was born in Limerick, 1818. Furthermore, this date is established on her gravestone, yet her baptismal certificate proves that her actual place and date of birth was in fact County Sligo in 1821. Her father was Edward Gilbert, a British officer serving in County Cork, and her mother was Eliza Oliver, the daughter of a wealthy Irish politician. Both parents came from fairly good backgrounds. Not much is known about her father's family history, but her mother grew up in her ancestral home called Castle Oliver, located in Limerick. As a baby, Eliza lived with her family in County Roscommon, yet after just 2 years, her father, Edward Gilbert, was stationed in India. First the family travelled to Liverpool, England, and while there, Eliza was baptised at St. Peter's Church. Following this, they departed for India on the 14th of March 1823. After 4 months of travelling, they safely arrived at their destination, a new home, which was thousands of miles away from Britain. However, after only a few months in India, Edward Gilbert unfortunately died of cholera. At the time, Eliza was still only an infant, and her mother, Eliza Oliver, was only 19 years old. Her mother was now left alone to look after her young daughter. Fortunately, her wealth, as well as what she inherited from her late husband, allowed her to have a decent life in India. The following year, she remarried another officer called Patrick Craigie. He grew fond of young Eliza and cared for her. However, he was concerned by her behaviour as she was a spoilt, mischievous little girl. Eventually, Eliza was sent back to Britain to be educated, staying with her stepfather's parents in Montrose, Scotland. This was her first time in formal education, and she instantly stood out among her peers as she had just returned from India, a faraway place her classmates would have only have heard of. Due to the time spent in India, her dress and mannerisms were described as peculiar, especially for a young middle-class girl. This frequently made her an object of curiosity and remark when interacting with new people. Eliza thrived and enjoyed all the attention she was getting from her peers and the local community in general. One teacher later recalled that Eliza was a beautiful young girl, but it was spoiled by her stubbornness. However, with all this attention, her mischievous behaviour only got worse. For example, on one occasion during a church service, she stuck flowers into the wig of an elderly man. Another time, she supposedly ran through the streets naked. Because of this questionable behaviour, she was described as a queer, wayward little Indian girl. It may have been because of this that her mother decided to move her. At 10 years old, she was sent to boarding school in Monk Wearmount, Sunderland. The school was owned by her stepfather's sister and husband, and while there, she continued her education. But it wasn't to last. While at school, she became known for her short temper and outstanding determination. Yet, after only a year, she moved to another school in Camden Place, Bath. The reason behind this was that her parents hoped that this more sophisticated education would turn her into a lady so she could marry a wealthy gentleman. Only a few years had passed when Eliza's mother attempted to marry her off to a 64-year-old Adjutant General of Bengal. Eliza was only 14 at the time and later described the general as a gouty old rascal of 60 years. Nevertheless, she was a cunning teenager who had her own ideas. In 1837, at age 16, Eliza ran away to Ireland with a captain on leave called Thomas James. They then married in County Meath. Eliza and her new husband soon made their way to India, but she couldn't settle into colonial life, and the marriage eventually collapsed after Thomas James got involved with another woman. She later remarked that runaway matches, like runaway horses, are almost sure to end in a smash-up. After 5 years together in India, the couple separated, and Eliza made her way back to England. While travelling back to Britain, she had an affair with a fellow passenger. Once her husband found out about this, he sued for divorce. With this, a decree was granted that did not allow either party to remarry. Now on her own in London, Eliza took up dancing lessons and decided that she wanted a career on the stage. She reinvented herself as a Spanish dancer under the stage name Lola Montez, making her debut at the Haymarket on the 3rd of June 1843. In her autobiography, she claimed that her onstage debut was a successful one. However, this was not true. She was recognised as Mrs. James and was booed off stage for being a phony Spanish dancer. Later, a man she had rejected led a protest against her. All this hampered her career in England, so she moved to the continent, looking for success. It was around this time that she began accepting favours from certain wealthy men. Word got around, and soon she was seen by many as a courtesan. Eliza, now known as Lola Montez, travelled to Germany. Supposedly, while here, she assaulted a police officer with a horsewhip. Later in life, she always carried a whip and frequently used it. This moment went down as a turning point for this unique characteristic of hers. Furthermore, it was in Germany that she made the acquaintance of the famous Hungarian composer Franz Liszt. The details of their relationship aren't clear, but it's more than likely that they were romantically involved with one another. In any case, thanks to his contacts, Lola Montez was given the chance to debut in Paris as a dancer in Fromental Halavy's opera Le Lazeron. Unfortunately, her performance was very disappointing and publicly mocked. One newspaper of the time wrote that her beauty gave her an initial advantage, but that she had no talent to go with it. In Paris, she attended many high society events, making friends and lovers in a variety of circles. She had affairs with Alexandre Dumas, the man responsible for the Count of Monte Cristo and the Three Musketeers, as well as Alexandre Duharrier, a drama critic and newspaper owner. It was thanks to these wealthy men that she took as lovers, which allowed her to maintain a great lifestyle and continue her career as a dancer. However, one night in 1845, after a night of drinking and gambling, one of her lovers got into a quarrel. The newspaper publisher Alexandre Duharrier was in attendance, and while intoxicated, offended Jean-Baptiste Rosemont de Beauvalon. Infuriated, he challenged the drunk Duharrier to a duel. Although Lola, who was skilled with a gun, offered to take his place, the newspaper publisher refused and accepted the duel, and as a result, ended up dying. After the trial, Lola pursued the composer Franz Liszt to Bonn. For a strange reason, she demanded entrance to a male-only banquet, and once inside, danced on a table, leaving everyone present shocked and perturbed. After this episode, she made her way to Munich and arrived in September 1846. While there, she caught the attention of King Ludwig I of Bavaria, who had a love for all things Spanish and female. There was a rumour that when they first met, the king asked her if her bosom was real, saying nature or art. She responded to the question by cutting open the front of her dress, revealing what nature had given her. It didn't take long for her to conquer the elderly king and become his mistress. Sources from the time tell us that she had a lot of control over the king and used her influence to support the liberal political and social causes, namely by limiting the power of the conservatives and the Catholic clergy. Her influence became so great that Ludwig dismissed Karl von Ab, the leader of the Ministry of Interior, because he was against making Lola a countess. Ludwig was deeply in love with Lola, yet this bewitchment later led to his downfall. The government and local population noticed how Lola was controlling the king. They disliked this, her reformist attitude, arrogant manner, and her outbursts of temper. Her unpopularity rose when her petition to be made a noble was made public. Despite the resentment that existed in Bavaria in 1847, Ludwig went against public opinion and made her Countess of Landsfeld. As well as this, she was granted a large annual pension and a nice home. One general apparently said, "I've never seen such a demon," when referring to Lola. In 1848, riots broke out in Bavaria. Among the groups involved was a faction at the University of Munich that rose up against the king. Taking the advice of his mistress, he decided to close the whole university. Yet, by March the revolutionary movement had gained momentum, and he had no other option than to reopen the university. The power of the revolutionaries and the hostility towards Lola left him with no other option than to expel her from the country, and a few days later, abdicate the throne. Despite Ludwig's previous popularity, his relationship with Lola and the decisions he made under her influence played a large part in his demise. Lola then fled to Switzerland, where she hoped Ludwig would join her, but he never did. Then, in late 1848, she returned to England and quickly married George Trafford Heald, a young army cornet who had just so happened to come into an inheritance. However, the terms from her first divorce stated that no party could remarry if the other was still living. Because of this, she was arrested on a charge of bigamy, but released on bail. The newlyweds were forced to escape England. Initially, they lived in France, and later in Spain, but after just 2 years, the relationship grew sour. Then, one day, George Heald mysteriously disappeared. It's unclear what exactly happened to him, but it was reported that he drowned. Once again on her own, in 1851, Lola set off to make a new start in America. She hoped to reinvent herself as a performer. It was also around this time that she started carrying a whip with her more frequently, and also a pistol. Lola became involved in numerous assaults, scandals, and legal actions. Apparently, she used her whip to beat a man who had offended her. Although these rumours were probably based on truth, Lola denied these allegations, but she did say, "There is one comfort in all these falsehoods, which is that these men very likely would have deserved horsewhipping." In May 1853, she arrived on the West Coast in San Francisco. It was here that she gave the first performances of her notorious spider dance. On the 1st of July, she took on a third marriage to Patrick Purdy Hall, owner of the San Francisco Whig. After a month, the couple moved to Grass Valley, California, but the marriage soon failed. He then sued for a divorce, naming a German doctor as co-respondent. A few days later, the doctor's corpse was found in some nearby hills, after having been shot dead. Lola remained in Grass Valley for nearly 2 years before sailing for Sydney, Australia. She arrived in Sydney on the 16th of August, 1855. Initially, she starred in a play called Lola Montez in Bavaria, which was based on part of her life. A few weeks later, while performing the same play at the Theatre Royal, Melbourne, she performed her erotic spider dance, raising her skirts so high that the audience could see. She wore no underclothing at all. This performance was seen by many as completely against public morality, and many even called for her to be arrested. After this, she continued to tour Australia with mixed success. Her infamy grew when she publicly horsewhipped Henry Seacamp, the editor of the Ballarat Times, because of a negative article published about her. In May 1856, Lola finished her tour and sailed with her manager Noel Folland back to San Francisco. However, one night he was lost overboard. The details remain unclear and no official investigation followed. Now back in the States, she had hoped to continue her career, but she had little success. Now in her mid-30s, she invented herself as a lecturer, speaking on her life and heroines of history. Moreover, she turned to religion and delivered a series of moral lectures in Britain and America. In 1859, she moved to New York and lived a quiet life until her death. One newspaper wrote that she doesn't have much to do with the world's people. Lola Montez died on the 7th of January 1861 due to complications caused by the tertiary stage of syphilis. She is buried in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you everyone for watching this video on Lola Montez. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave me a like. If you're new to the channel, why not subscribe? I was thinking of making an Instagram page for Forgotten Lives. Let me know if you think it's a good idea in the comments below. That's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks!